Welcome to SORMAG's Writers Cafe, where we share the real writer's life over a cup of friendship, sprinkled with laughter and wisdom. My name is LaShonda Hoffman, and I'm your host. Today is all about men in literature. Our guests are Damon Al, Cortez Law II, D.E. Rogers, and Keith Thomas Walker. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Let's take a moment. We're going to introduce our panel. D.E. hasn't popped in yet, but if he does, I'll let you know. Damon, we'll go with you first. Tell us who you are, what you write, and your latest book.
All right. My name is Damon Alvarez. I am from New Orleans, Louisiana. I am an author and creative writer. I write kids books, and I also write my first solo book was entitled Soul of a Man, Poetry for the Soul. And my current book is actually entitled Lyrical Soul, Lyrical Quotes That Speak to Her Mind, Body, and Spirit. And I also have another kid series coming out entitled Chance You're Begging for Trouble.
Thank you. Cortez?
Yes, my name is Cortez Law III. I enjoy writing mystery, crime stories, suspense, thrillers, and speculative fiction, which includes science fiction, maybe a little horror in the future as well. My past titles include these mystery suspense titles, Kremlin Tide, Cold Lick, the sci-fi thriller Siphon, and the current book is going to come out in early October. I'm doing some promotion for it right now, is the psychological thriller Serial Rights, R-I-T-E-S.
Thank you. Keith?
Mm-hmm. Hi, my name is Keith Thomas Walker, known as the master of romantic suspense and urban fiction. I published my first book, Romance, in 2009. Since then, I've published a couple dozen books, a few novellas, poetry collection. I normally write mostly romance, but I also like to write urban romances and just urban books, suspense. I've done mystery thrillers, the young adult collection, the Finley High series. I've done erotica, Christian romance. I think I've tapped into every genre possible. I've done erotica. My latest book is called Backslide. It's an urban romance. I'm really proud of this one. It's the best of both worlds for me because I love romance and I love a little bit of urban to it. And so far, Backslide has taken off really well. I got a lot of great reviews. I'm really, really happy to talk about that.
All right, thank you. Most of the time you see people promoting the women writers, so we don't really get to showcase our men too much. So I'm always trying to put the men out there that they're especially our African-American writers. We do have men writers out here who are doing well, and I want our readership to know that we do. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. I really wanted to, and I'll probably do a couple of more because there's a couple of other men that's like, hey, what about me? So I'll probably do a couple of more, a series of men in literature because we always bragging about our women, but I think we need to brag about our men too, and also let people know about your book. I asked on my Facebook page some questions, see if anybody had questions, and I'm surprised I got about 10 questions. So I'm going to start with them since they sent them in for me, and I like that. The first one is from Yolanda Lattimore, and she wanted to know, how do you see stories different from women? Anybody can jump in, or we can just go in the order that you went in to talk.
All right, well, this is Keith. As far as seeing stories differently, I think that looking at life from a man's point of view, looking at romance and just the beauty of women and the struggles that they go through, from a man's point of view, you get just a different take on it because women are very emotional creatures, which is beautiful. And I truly love to observe and just take in as much of their aura as possible. And when I write the romance, I try to include, obviously, the man's point of view, which is something that a woman can do as well. But I think coming directly from a male, when you're thinking about the emotions that drive us, it's a lot different than the emotions that drive a woman, because women, when they look at a love interest, they have certain things that they like to look for in a man, stability and strength and things of that nature. And men, we have a totally different mind state when we look into what we think is the perfect heroine. We want strength, we want beauty, but we also want passion. And I think a lot of female readers don't really understand the true depths of a man's compassion. So that when I include that in my books, it's an eye opener. And also just the overall depth of my male characters. I like to deal with a lot of troubled characters. I've dealt with alcoholics, some battling other types of substance abuse. I've dealt with some that have just come out of prison. So the emotions that a man has when he's really down in the dirt and just trying to climb back up, and he reaches up and there's a woman there to help him, I try to bring all of that into my books. I think overall, though, when women write romances with men, they put a lot of the standards in there. They want them to be rich and successful. Usually they're a little cocky, braggadocious. I usually like to write more down-to-earth type of men, the men you see every day, not necessarily the millionaires, just everyday Joe, because those are the guys that interest me the most, and those are the guys I'm most familiar with. And luckily, my women readers have been very responsive to that, because sometimes they do just want a regular guy, and they want to see just what drives a regular guy to go into a situation. So I like that. I think that being a male author, I can tap into that very well. So I always try to put that, just the things that I've experienced in life, into my books, and my experiences are always going to be unique to me.
Yeah, I can signify with a lot of that too. I'm sorry, this is Cortez.
Okay, Cortez.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what he said. As writers, no matter what the genres or our gender, we're observers of human nature. We should be. And the psychology of people is going to infuse what we do, whether it's a male character or a female character. For me, not so much the romance, but taking the female character, especially an African-American female character, and putting her in the midst of suspense and mystery and those types of life and death type of games is really interesting for me. I can bring out the soft side, the very contemplative side, like you said, too, the emotional side of them, too. But put them in the midst of those situations, I get to bring out and display that and portray that tough exterior that they have to have as well. Just the tough and there's the tender when you're dealing with homicide and everything that goes along with that on and off the job. She can be sweet and she can be wonderful, but she's got this tough career that she's dealing with 9 to 5 and beyond that. And I find that really interesting. And you don't see a whole lot of that in today's AA fiction, where there's general trade, where there's the Christian angle, which I tend to write in. You don't see a whole lot of that, and that's kind of been my mission for a while now, is to put black folk in different genres, different positions. We're not all just he said, she said, and he loves me now, she loves me, he loves me now. That's a part of life for all of us. But it's just kind of nice that I'm going off on another path and just trying to put them in another situation, another career, and see where it goes from there. Hopefully, I can connect with some audiences, some audiences, whether male or female, in those particular genres, because it's just not being done as much. It's kind of interesting. If I can say this real quickly, when the Black Renaissance literary boom hit again, right around when Terry Mack was taking over, we had Alice Walker, and we had Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni doing those types of serious literary works. When she hit with Mama, and then Disappearing Act, then kaboom, and it went nuke with Waiting to Exhale. That whole blacks do read, and we will buy books, and that whole thing opened up to these publishers. And my point is, when we got to about the late 90s, we had a lot of black authors led by Walter Mosley, who got the big hit from Bill Clinton, and that took off with him when he got that endorsement in the early 90s with Devil in the Blue Dress. Late in the 90s, we had a lot of black authors, male and female, that were writing a lot of mystery and suspense and thrillers. And I mean, it just was gone in about 2 or 3 years, and I thought they were doing pretty well. One gentleman who's passed on, sadly to say, about 16 years now, was Hugh Holton, who was the high-ranking commander in the Chicago Police Department. And I read about every last one of his books that he ever put out. I thought he was a great author. But that whole genre just disappeared. I don't know what happened. And it really has been kind of sporadic since then. There's been some names. Walter, of course, I call him Uncle Walter myself. He's like the leading at the forefront of this genre of AA authors, and I just don't know what happened. So it's kind of exciting and kind of daring and kind of scary too, to kind of branch off and do this, which is different from what the gentleman, I apologize, I don't know your name, I think it was Keith, I apologize, I got your name wrong, sir, that was just speaking about. It's very different, and trying to get outside the romance department.
Well, this is Damon. The way I write is that I write from a creative perspective, and when I first started writing, I started out with poetry. Long story short, so I like to add depth to the characters, and as writers, and especially African American male writers, I feel like as Black men, we and African American women, we are the greatest, thinkers and and entertainers in the world. And like the brother was saying, the genre market as far as like African American writers, it's wide open right now. So my thing is always to give the character depth. It's just to put them in situations where people have never really thought that they could see these characters in before. Instead of us doing the like in a movie, the slave narrative, or playing the cop.
Right.
But yeah, instead of doing that, now it's we can be superheroes, or we can be doctors, we can be attorneys. We've seen things like that in the Cosby Show and all of these different genres. So I see like a lot of kind of hood like trap books coming out, and that's kind of flooding. That's nothing wrong with that if you write in that genre, but I think we can usher in a new renaissance and a new revolution by just putting out brand new fresh content, because I think that's what's really needed right now, especially for us being Black men. Talking about our African American women.
Right, I hear you.
I agree. I think that I know romance has always been a popular genre. It's always been that way, but I noticed that the urban literature it just blew up, and I think maybe because it hit a generation who didn't. When I talk about romance, the women would say to me, "Oh, that's fluff. That's not real life." And so I think the urban hit that generation that wanted what they think is real life, what they want to see in real life. And so I think that's why it blew up so much. A lot of people, authors had issues with it because, they're used to, as we call it, the fantasy world. And so nobody, like, why would you want to read about what's happening in this world now? The drugs, the craziness, but I think that I tell people who are looking for books that everybody has a book that they like, and so, and maybe that's what they wanted to see. That's what they wanted to read. I know a lot of my nieces, and they love the urban, they call it the hood books. So, because that's their generation. They understand that. They love the hip hop, the hip hopness in it, the thugness. They wanted to read those kind of books, and so you couldn't get mad because that's what they want to read, But I like real life, but I don't want to get that real. I don't want to read about drug dealers and thug life. I see it on the street, so that's how come I love romance. I love science fiction. I love the superhero because it takes me out of the world that I'm living in. I don't need to read about that. I want to go out of that. But I'm thankful that there is a choice, that we have a choice. For a long time we didn't have a choice with our books. We had to read somebody else's fantasy about that, and we had to pretend that they looked like us. So when I pick up a book and I see a strong Black man on the cover, I'm excited because I remember when there was never a book like that, So I'm thrilled that we have a variety of books, and nobody's book is better than the other person's book. It's just I tell people there's a reader out there for everybody, so we can get them all, and write our stuff and go out there and share it to the community. I have a question from Marsha Malcolm. She wants to know, how do people view you once they learn you're an author?
Well, I'll go. I'll go first, and this is Damon. I think for most people, they can only see it as far as the picture that they're given, and they can't necessarily read your mind, and they can't necessarily see anything beyond maybe what they see in like person or maybe on social media. And I think once they and I believe once they see you as an author, and not just necessarily as an author, because I believe all of the gentlemen on the panel, we all write across different genres, as creative writers, and that's something, like that's, I was talking about that earlier. I was talking about the way, as Black people, we're so creative, so they see that creativity, and it just kind of it almost in a sense takes their breath away, and it starts a whole nother conversation, and it opens up so many it opens up so many more avenues of opportunities, and there's so many people probably watching us now doing this that are going to come behind us that we're it's like we're I think we're kind of just getting started in a sense, and I think we're just scratching the surface with it, so it's starting. I think it's starting like a totally brand new revolution, especially as African American males are writing nowadays.
Yes.
Okay. Response to that.
Go ahead.
Well, response to that question, I usually get a lot of support whenever I meet a stranger and they realize I'm an author. I tell them. They're always very supportive. They're always interested in what I write, and almost always they'll want a book immediately to read it. I worked at the hospital, and being with in a building that's like at least 65% female, I target audiences all around me. So I give my books out to the nurses and sell them to them. I was on the elevator just the other day taking a book to one of them, and another woman just saw the book in my hand, and she was an avid reader. I didn't know it, but she said, "What do you read?" And I showed her the cover. She said, "Is that a good book?" And I said, "I hope so." I wrote it, and I turned it over and showed her. And she was like, "Oh my God, I want it. Where you work?" And I told her, and I didn't think anything of it. But she called up to my department like 10 minutes later. She said, "Hey, this is Kenny. I just met you on the elevator. Can you bring me a book?" And I was like, "Awesome." So I took her a book, and then when I got on her floor, 3 other nurses were interested, and they all ended up buying books. I think I sold like 7 books just on that 10-minute period. The other thing I get response-wise is people asking for help, because it seems a lot of people do have a story, and I think everybody has a story, but the people that have it and really want to get it out there, it's just, the numbers are wild. So they always ask me, that's the follow-up question, well, I wrote a book, can you help me get it published, or can you help me with it, or can you read it, or where do I go next with this? And I remember when I was starting out, sadly, when I was first getting into it, I had a lot of those questions too. And when I reached out to certain authors that I was vaguely familiar with, they weren't very helpful to me. And some of them would refer me to books they'd written about how to get published and, things like that. Well, I wrote this book, here it is. After you read it, if you have questions, come back to me, and things like that. So whenever I get approached with it, I always take a totally different response. I'm always helpful. I think I overextend myself, to be honest with you, because I just don't know how to tell people no. So I always read what they wrote. I always give them pointers. I've gone as far as doing cover design, doing full edit, typesetting, paperback and ebook. I've actually published a couple under my own label. So I'm always helpful whenever I do meet someone who wants to be an author. The other side of that is I get a lot of time wasted, because I would say 70% of the time they never really either finish the book or publish the book. And I go through a lot of work to try to help them, but the reasons why they haven't published it previously keep reoccurring. So although I've invested so much time in it, it just never gets done. But just overall, I love meeting people who don't know I'm an author. I love conversating with people. I try to be charismatic, and I just try to sell myself in any opportunity, because readers, they drive the whole industry, and you can't be anything without a reader. So once I meet someone and they read the book and they come back and tell me they liked it, first thing I ask them for is their email address to add them to my email list, because I need that support. So I always love to go to places where people don't know I'm an author, and then I tell them what I do and try to get them hooked. That's my goal. Try to get them hooked so they'll keep coming back.
Mhm. Mhm.
Did you want to say something, Cortez?
Oh no, I can identify with all that. Yeah, I like what you said about trying to add value. In terms of trying to help some other people that come to you and asking about what did you do to get started. I haven't run into a whole lot of that. I haven't run into a lot of the other part that he mentioned as well, about you find out how serious people really are. You might check back with them and see how's it going, or I haven't got back to that yet, or that type of thing. So, but no hate. You know what I'm saying? But I like I said, but you're trying to add value and you try to guide people along the way when they need some help. So, and it's kind of like you like the anonymity, but you wouldn't mind somebody, hey, at the bus stop or something. Hey, aren't you the guy that so that's nice too. That's nice. That'll come. But yeah, I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, man.
That's wonderful. I think you hear so many negative comments about the writers don't help other writers. So I'm glad to hear that you all do offer your help, because it's hard to even reach out to somebody and then for them to blow them off. Like that just makes it bad for other writers. So I'm glad to hear that you all don't blow people off. What is your greatest? Yeah. What is your greatest writing roadblock, and how did you overcome it?
Wow, greatest writing roadblock.
If she didn't have one, that's even better.
You know what? Let me start. I think for me, I grew up very introverted. So just putting myself out there, just jumping straight into the ocean and just kind of learning to swim in a sense, as I guess a metaphor for writing, learning how to swim in a sense. I think that was my greatest hurdle in the very beginning. But once you do your first book, you start getting all these different creative ideas, and you start doing your second book, and you start getting into networking, which is very key. But I think that was my biggest hurdle. I think it was probably just mentally psyching myself out, saying, is my story good enough? Am I a good enough writer to really get out there and just, pretty much share my talents with the world?
Yeah, that last point. I think that's something that.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that's something that a lot of writers go through. I think I read something some time ago that was a Stephen King, that even he gets nervous when he puts a new book out. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe somebody that successful.
Right.
I mean, he knocks it out the park. But, yeah, that can kind of get you about, am I good enough? Is this going to be good enough? Did this top the last effort? Am I improving? I think the thing that's biggest with me, though, and a lot of writers, I think, go through this as well, is that time balance, that balance between writing and marketing. Because marketing can eat up 80% of your time, but you got to put some pages to the new story, the story that you're working on, or some future idea or something. I think that is the one for me. That's what kind of blocks me off, I think, a little bit. And I deal with that every day.
Well, as for me, I had, in my writing career, I guess I had two major hurdles that I had to overcome. The first was getting my first book published. Because growing up, I always loved to read and I loved to write. And as early as grade school, I was getting acclaim from my teachers about my poetries and my short stories. It continued through high school, short story contests. I was always the go-to guy as far as my English teachers were concerned. Whenever someone was offering a contest or any type of essay situation, they would always say, Keith, you got to enter this. And usually I would win. So by the time I graduated high school, I had so many trophies and awards and certificates, I just knew that I was going to be a writer. And I wrote my first book, and I wrote it in college, and I was in a creative writing class when I wrote it. And I would pass it around to all of these people who were nothing like me, who knew nothing about the book I was writing. It was just an environment that was totally foreign to them. It was an urban book. And I couldn't get it published. And I tried, and I kept getting rejection letters. And I think I just got into a depression. I wouldn't call it that at the time, but looking back, I guess it was, because I didn't write. After that experience of not being able to get my first book published, I didn't write for about 9 years. I didn't write anything. I just said, okay, let's just graduate school and live my life. And that's what I did. And I remember when I first started working at the hospital where I currently work, which was about 11 years ago, I was working a night shift, and my department was pretty small. It was, I think, 4 people day shift, 2 people second shift, and me by myself on a night shift. So I had a lot of downtime because it was just that slow. In the first couple of months, I was just on the internet, just browsing YouTube, Wikipedia, just bored out of my mind. And one day I pulled up Microsoft Word and just stared at a blank page and was like, dude, you really could do something with this time. So when I decided to go ahead and start writing again, that was a hurdle I had to get over. I had to tell myself it was going to be different this time, that no matter what, I wasn't going to stop. I was going to make it. And what I did initially was try to figure out why I couldn't get the first book published. And I think it was because I kind of boxed myself into the urban genre, because I grew up in a bad environment. I have a lot of brothers and stepbrothers. Some have been killed. All of them have been to prison at least once. And gangs, drugs, the whole situation. So I was writing about that type of lifestyle because that's what I knew. So I realized if that's who I want to be as an author, that may not be the route to take, because I tried that and it didn't work. So I had a challenge for myself, and I wanted to write 7 stories from 7 points of views that were not familiar to me. And I wrote one from a young white guy's first point of view. I wrote one from a 80-year-old white woman's point of view. I just took myself out of what I was familiar with. And one of the ones I wrote was from a black woman's point of view. So I started passing these stories around to the nurses at the hospital, and they were all just eating them up. Did you write another story? Did you write another story? But the one that I got the most feedback on and the most acclaim on was the one I wrote from a single black mother. So I was like, okay, let me roll with that. So I took that story, and it was basically the first chapter of my first book, and I just finished it. I wrote the whole book, and I sent it off. And within 2 months, I had 3 publishers that wanted to publish it, and that was mind-blowing to me.
Wow.
Because growing up, I never thought that I would write a book with a romance novel, first of all. A book with a topless gown on the cover. That was something I never thought I would do, never wanted to do. But then when I accepted a publisher and they sent back the cover, sure enough, there was a topless gown on the cover. And I'm like, oh, my God, am I going to have a book with a topless gown on the cover? I embraced it because the target audience that my first book was written for is maybe not the target audience I was going for. It wasn't a love story. There was no romance angle to it. It was just urban. So although everyone in my circle loved it, these guys were not people that are going to go into a bookstore and buy books. This is before the Kindle. So these prisoners, these brothers and cousins, they loved the book, but they weren't going to be a big enough audience to actually buy the book. So I realized that going with the love stories and romance was my ticket. So that's how I got over that first hurdle. The second hurdle, which was the bigger one, was after 6 books with my publisher, they started doing bad financially, and they ended up folding altogether. But before that, they went to an ebook-only format. And when they decided to go to an ebook-only format, by then, ebooks was kind of taking off, but it really wasn't a big deal. And my contracts were reflective of that, because since ebooks wasn't something they were doing like with my first few books, the ebook percentage wasn't that big. So when they decided to go ebook only, I was looking at my contracts and I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. I'm used to when it first started, from Walmarts all across the country. I mean, when they do print runs, your book's everywhere. I would get calls from people in the family members and friends that were overseas, and they said, hey, your book's in my military base in Japan. So having a print run like that was major. So when they decided to go to ebook only, it was like, I could totally do that by myself. What I didn't realize was it's not that easy. But I decided I would have to leave them to get out of that contract because, and there was a clause in it as well. Any book I wrote afterwards, they had first dibs on it. So I tried to write a book they wouldn't want, and they just took it anyway.
Oh, man.
I'm going to stuck with this contract indefinitely is what I was thinking because I really wanted out, but I couldn't get out because of that clause. So the only way to get out of that clause was to self-publish my book. So if I write a book and I self-publish it, I'm out of the clause, and I don't ever have to give them another book. But self-publishing was something that I was not familiar with at all. And so that was a huge hurdle. And that once again, I reached out to people. Okay, I'm thinking about self-publishing. I don't know how to format a book. I don't know how to do covers. I don't know how to typeset. Once again, authors will tell me, yeah, I wrote a book about that. Why don't you check it out? Here's the link. And I'm like, dude, I just want a straight answer. So I had to really just self-teach myself. I was frustrated with them, but after a while I learned it's not their fault. These are busy people. I can't be upset with them for not wanting to help me. So I just took a leap of faith, and I self-published my first book by myself. I would say the thing that helped me was my publisher, though, because my first 6 books were everywhere, and I had a big fan base built off of that. So when I started my self-publishing journey, it wasn't from scratch per se. I had people who already knew me, and I created my website, and it was getting hit. So self-publishing my book, my first book, that was the biggest leap of faith. I think I've done 18 more since then. And I never looked back, never went back to a publisher.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, that was amazing. You all, I have a whole bunch of questions, but you all are answering them without me even asking. That's great. I love it when it's just a chat versus me doing an interview per se. I have one question, and I want to ask that before I forget about it, but what male author are you reading?
I just got done reading 2 books at the same time. Lee Child, who's a favorite of mine. You know, he's got the Tom Cruise movies based on his books. And Walter Moser, of course, Uncle Walter. Michael Connelly has been, you know, for my eyes quite a bit. I mentioned the late Hugh Holton. Pretty much in the detective genre. Pretty much stayed in that genre so far.
The male authors go ahead.
Oh, no, you can go.
Well, the male authors that I grew up on are still pretty much my favorites. I grew up on Stephen King. He was the first author I ever read. It freaked me out because I was in the 5th grade reading it, and it was it was under my bed. But anyway, I still love Stephen King, Walter Mosley, Walter Dean Myers. The ones in my circle that I like Keith Kareem Williams, Shakir Rashan. I try to get into street lit authors. It's hard for me. I really do try. I try my best. But I do like Ashley and Jaquavis and Quan. I read those books. I read them just to learn about it. I still read Donald Gowan's old books. I like male authors. I got a lot of.
I need to read some of his.
Yeah.
I like the old school stuff. I like the stuff from Conti Cullen. I like stuff from the Harlem Renaissance. Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni. Greatly inspired by Tupac. I know he only wrote that one book, The Rose That Grew from the Concrete. But and I was reading another book. It was called I forgot the author. It was called Who You Know, something like that. But basically, it was about networking, and it was just basically saying that you already have what you need in front of you. You just basically have to tap into it. So, I mean, I read, and I like to read a lot of things about. I like to read a lot of things about history also. So, I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. So it just really depends on my mood, I guess, at the time.
Those are some good names. Good names. What advice would you offer to an author whose book isn't selling?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What advice would you offer to an author whose book isn't selling like they thought it should?
Oh, okay. Wow. I think the gentleman with the long history, the hybrid career he's had with the major publisher and the self-publishing can probably answer that better than I could. I'm still trying to build my tribe, so to speak. But he's pretty much got it, and still continuing to build. So I think he can take that question maybe better than the other one, better than the rest of us maybe. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Keith.
Yes. Sorry, I was eating a chicken nugget. I'm sorry, that's unprofessional. Cut him off, LaShawna. Cut him off. Cut him off. As far as advice, I had it on mute. I wasn't chewing on the phone. I unmuted it. As far as advice, I would say, I'm assuming you're talking about a self-published author who's having trouble.
Well, I get a lot from people who expect their book to come out and they're going to be selling 500-600 books, and it's hard to sell a book.
It is.
So,
if you're without a publisher,
yeah, even with a publisher sometimes, because you still have to, like Cortez was saying, building your tribe. That's what I teach about building relationships. You have to build. I think that people put a book out and they just automatically assume they're going to sell 500 that day. And then they find out they sold 2, they're devastated. Or even when they're working with small press, they think the small publishers aren't putting their books out there, and I'm going, dude, don't nobody know who you are. So what type of advice would you give them when they're new at this? So how do they get themselves out there?
I would advise them to understand that when you're dealing with your creative property, and you own it, you have to own it to the fullest. There's not going to be anybody, whether it be a publisher or an agent or whoever, there's not going to be anybody who wants your success more than you. And there's not going to be anybody who knows you more than you, or your book more than you, or what you've gone through more than you. So when you just totally accept the burden that the success of this book is all on me and just roll with it with that mind state, then you got nobody to blame but yourself. So rather than depend on anybody to help, you just got to do it all. Back in the day, I've done so much just whatever. I'm talking advertising obviously is huge. There's a lot of websites you pay them a certain fee, they'll put your book on their front page for a period of time. You make ads. You got to make flyers. You got to get somebody to print a bunch of flyers. But then when you got a stack of 1,000 flyers, you got to distribute these flyers. You can give these flyers to different conventions. Even if you're not going to the convention, you can give them to them because they are always looking for stuff to put in their goodie bags. Books are good to put in goodie bags too. You got to give out a lot of books. When you first start out, if you're not selling well, that's my recommendation right there. Get the product out there. If they're not buying it, give it to them. If you got, say, 50 books in a box, hit the street. Go to Walmart parking lots, which is kind of illegal, but I do it anyway. Give them a flyer, talk about your book, try to sell them the book. If you can't make the sale, give them the book. Go to beauty shops. Some of the beauty shops won't let you in, but if you tell them, I'm not selling anything, I just want to hand out some flyers and give away some books, that's totally different. They'll let you in all day for that. Go to beauty shops, hand out your flyers, give out your books, sign your books. Just keep building it. Ask them for their emails if they can. Try to keep getting emails. Emails are crucial.
Yes,
I do a lot of poetry events. Because I still do a lot of spoken word poetry. So basically anywhere I go and I can get up on the stage, I'm going to talk about my book. I'm going to promote my book. I'm going to give out flyers. I'm going to stand out. I'll walk the room, hand out flyers. I got crews. I printed out T-shirts for my company. Got a bunch of my homeboys. We all just hit the streets. Just guerrilla tactics. Just whatever it takes. And obviously social media is huge. You got to be everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I do giveaways all the time. Create your own group. Try to get people to come into your group on Facebook. So whatever doesn't show up on your page, then they can get a second chance to get it on your group. Be interactive. That's crucial too. If somebody emails me, to this day, whether it be Facebook or directly through my email, if somebody messages me and say, hey, I read your book, I'm going to respond. I don't care if I got to do this 10 times a day. I remember my wife, she used to literally hate it because I would be on the computer a couple hours just responding to people that read my book. And I would tell her, listen, if somebody took the time to read my book and then took the time to message me and took the time to post a review, that person's getting my attention regardless. So I'm never going to stop doing that. And eventually she did understand what I was going through. So all of those things, once you do them all together, it pays off, hopefully.
Those were excellent tips. Excellent. I like that you said to give away. You hear people saying, give away? I'm not giving my book away. But you should have a stack of books that you're giving away just so people can, when I go to conferences. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you talk about investing, people, they invest in the stock market. They invest in mom and pop shops. They invest in their children. They invest in education. But if you're an author, you got to invest in yourself. And if you got a budget that you want to do for advertising, say even if it's not a huge budget, say it's only $2,000. That's really all I can spend. And that's all of that in yourself. And if you don't want to just, I mean, some of the marketing is expensive. Some of the ads are like $1,500 a piece if you want to go to like a top-tier website. So maybe you can't afford that. But if you do giveaways, say you take that whole $2,000 and just do giveaway, whether it be on paperback or ebook. Ebook preferably because that's way cheaper. You don't have to leave your house. You don't have to mail it. You don't have to put it in the sun. So just do $2,000 worth of giveaway. $2,000 if your book's about $4 each. What is that? 500 books. You're giving away 500 books. It may sound silly at first, but first of all, those 500 books are going to people who have said they want to read it. Second of all, out of those 500, you're probably going to get about 50 reviews. Also, even if you're on Amazon, Amazon doesn't care who bought the book to who and who gifted it. That's still a sale. So those giveaways also move your ranking up on Amazon's bestsellers list. So invest in yourself. It's a good idea.
I love that. That was an excellent tip. Very excellent tip.
Exactly.
Keith kind of hinted to it, but I want to know what is your secret to balancing your career and family? How do you maintain that?
Tell these family to go to hell. No, I'm kidding. As far as I'm just kidding.
Cut him off.
As far as balancing, I've been fortunate, like I said. I worked in a hospital, and I worked the night shift, and there's a lot of downtime. So as far as balancing my career, I do a lot of writing at work, and I still do that. So luckily, when I get home from work, I've written like a chapter or half a chapter. I don't have to go home and write. I can go home and devote that time to my family. If I didn't have that opportunity, honestly, I couldn't answer that question because since I've been writing the whole time, I've been in the same position at work. So I've never had to struggle with it. But like I said, as far as my wife complaining about the time I was on the Internet, you just have to be open with them. Listen, I'm going to do this for a couple hours. Still leaves virtually 12 hours in a day, so just give me a little time. I'll be back. And whenever I do have to write at home, I got my office, and I'll just tell them, hey, I'm going to go in here. It's 1 o'clock. I'll be out by 4. We can go to the movies afterwards, but while I'm in here, don't disturb me unless it's an emergency. If they're getting a little too loud, I got earplugs for that. So I'll just stay in there in my zone. And after years, they respect that. They respect your space. They realize what you're doing, and they see the results of it. And if you have an understanding family, which you should, just make sure you give them their time. That's important because if I'm going to do this all day long, then tomorrow I got to do something with the family. That's just got to happen. So just be fair.
Yeah, just
good advice.
Yeah, just blocking off that time. That's good. That's good. Yep, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's time management, and just like it was said, just having if you have people that care and understand and that are pushing you and that are rooting you on, it's the time management doesn't it's not an issue, So when you're writing, they understand who you are and what you're doing, and what you're naturally just trying to share your talent with the world. So that's another responsibility within itself. But you still have to give the people who sow into your life their time also. So it's give and take.
Thank you. That was good advice. I know it's hard as a working person trying to balance family and them understanding. So it is good if you do have an understanding family most times, unless you got my 10-year-old who doesn't listen to nothing I say when I tell him I'm going live. He'll come and bug me anyway. Well, this has been a great interview. I've really enjoyed talking to you all and listening to your stories and just, getting the feel of writing from a man's point of view. I think that's all my questions I have. You guys did really good in answering the questions and flowing with it. I try to keep it like we're at a coffee shop just running our mouth, so versus the yes, no, answer questions kind of thing. Can you tell us how we can get in contact with you? How can readers reach you online or offline?
Yes. They can contact me, Cortez Law, www.cortezlaw.net. I'm on Facebook. I'm in LaShonda's group, See on the Net promotion group. You can contact me. I've got several books up on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, the typical online retailers. Goodreads, I've got a Goodreads page as well, Cortez Law III. All the normal haunts, you can find me.
My primary contact area will be my website, keithwalkerbooks.com. I got links on the very first page at the very top on how to connect with me on Facebook or Twitter, on Instagram. You could Google Keith Thomas Walker. I got a lot of hits on that. Facebook, Keith Thomas Walker once again. And Amazon, Keith Thomas Walker once again. I got over 25 titles on Amazon. So just remember my name, Keith Thomas Walker, and you can find me.
You can find me on Amazon, Damon Alvarez, and my books will pop up. And my website is www.soulofaman504.com, and it's www.soulofaman504.com. And all things social media, Twitter, Instagram, soulofaman504, and Facebook, just put in hashtag soulofaman504, and all my stuff will pop up.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of the Writers Cafe. I want to thank our listeners for taking time to listen to the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review for a chance to win a copy of one of the author's books. If you want to be a sponsor for our program, contact me at onesormag@gmail.com. If you like this podcast, share it with a friend. This is LaShonda Hoffman, and I'll see you on the net.